yourself. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Stasia, and if it's not your first time here, then welcome back. I am following a high carb, low fat, oil-free, plant-based diet for both health and weight loss based on the recommendations of Dr. John McDougall's book called The Starch Solution. I got a bone to pick with you, Gus. He decided he was going to chew my microphone. Well, you're lucky we love you. So I hope y'all can hear me okay. I'm sure we'll get through it. So on my channel, I'll be giving you guys all my tips and tricks of what I'm doing, my recipes, my what I eat in a day videos for my own personal health and weight loss journey. So if you're on one and you'd like to follow mine, then be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. Oh, and if you're on Facebook, be sure to join our community over there. Such a helpful and supportive group of people. The link for our Facebook group will be posted in the description box below. All right, so let's get into it. So a couple of weeks ago, I posted part 1 to this video where I showed how I meal prep all of my ingredients each week to make super simple, easy meals. So as most of you probably know by now, I'm a pretty busy mom.
Mom, isn't lunchtime yet?
And that's only one of them. So the faster that I can whip up something, the better. Meal prepping helps me out immensely with this way of eating. So if you haven't seen part 1 of meal prep with me, be sure to check that one out. A lot of people found it to be quite helpful. So I will post that link in my description box below. As you've seen in my intro today, I have had a heck of a time finding these oil-free frozen potatoes and frozen rice that everybody's talking about. I have seen other YouTubers following this way of eating as well that just whip out these amazing frozen potatoes, frozen rice that they just whip their meals up in 2 minutes and talk about how easy and how fantastic it is to have this as an option. So of course I'm excited watching this thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I run to the store, I run to another store, I run to another store and another store and another store, and nowhere sells these frozen potatoes and frozen rice. Now I don't know if this is just an American thing, but if so, us Canadians are getting gypped. This is the closest thing to frozen rice that I can find. And as you can see, it's not frozen rice, it's frozen cauliflower rice. But as you guys know, eating this way, that's great if we want it, but we want the actual rice. I have searched about 5 or 6 different grocery stores now, and I have yet to find any brand that sells oil-free frozen potatoes or frozen rice. The Alexa brand that I showed in the intro, I believe that's the exact brand that I've seen the other YouTubers talking about, that it comes oil-free. So why does every single one have oil in it in Canada? So to my fellow Canadians, if you guys have discovered a brand that is sold here, please leave it in the comments below for me so I can at least know that that is an option. But you know, when there's a will, there's a way. All right, so let's get in the kitchen and continue this meal prep. Okay guys, so today I'm just using about a half of a 10-pound bag of potatoes. Any potatoes will work, and you can certainly feel free to use more or less depending on how many you want to prep. So before we start chopping, you want to bring a large pot of water to a boil as we will be blanching the potatoes. Now, you can cut the potatoes in whatever shape you prefer. For myself, I like the bite-sized chunks or the wedges. So today I'm going to show you how I do both. I like to use the bite-sized chunks for either roasting potatoes or for hash browns. Really, they work well for either one. Keep in mind that the cooking times will vary based on the sizes that you cut them into, so you might just have to experiment a little bit with that. So here you will see that I'm cutting them into wedges. Now normally I would cook them probably separately, but for the sake of the video, I'm just going to cook them all together. These are perfect for when I'm really busy. I just pop them directly out of the freezer right into my air fryer and I'm good to go. I have personally only seasoned these after they have been cooked, but I think it should be fine to season them beforehand, so you could always give that a try as well. Okay, so now we're going to blanch the potatoes. Keep in mind we are not fully cooking them. So for my potatoes, I actually just kept them in the water for about 4 to 5 minutes, and that brought them to a point where it was soft enough for a fork to go through, but still tough enough that they weren't cooked. So after draining them from the boiled water, you want to place them in a bowl of ice cold water to stop the cooking process. I left them in there for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then I drained them and let them cool for another 15 to 20 minutes or so. Next, you want to spread the potatoes out onto a baking sheet. Be sure to spread them apart so that they're not touching, otherwise they will be frozen and stuck together. Then you want to place them in the freezer and freeze them until they are rock solid. For me, it took about 4 hours. But keep in mind, it can take anywhere up to 12 hours for them to be fully frozen. Remember how I said before to make sure that they're completely separated? This is why. They will be so stuck together that you cannot pull them apart. Okay, so we've made it to the last step. All you have to do now to store your frozen potatoes is to place them in a reusable freezer bag or airtight container. They can stay in your freezer for up to 3 months before going bad. When you are ready to cook them, you can either let them defrost in the refrigerator or use them directly out of the freezer in your pan, your oven, or your air fryer. Putting the date on the bag or the container is a good idea just to keep track of how fresh they are. Okay, so right here is the power of food prep. These are my pre-chopped onions that I keep in my mason jars that I showed you guys in that first meal prep video. Toss them in a pan, pour a little bit of water, and saute those babies. So again, I'm just using my pre-chopped peppers in my mason jar and dumping some of those in. I like to cook those together for just a couple of more minutes until they turn nice and soft. And lastly, we're going to put our frozen potatoes in the mix, add a little bit more water, and cook them all together. At this point, you can add whatever seasonings you like on your hash browns. Me personally, I like a little bit of garlic salt, as you guys probably might know by now. As for hash browns, I love me some cumin, so I'm throwing some of that in there. And lastly, some paprika. And again, guys, no hard rules, just use whatever spices you like. Mix it all up and let it cook for another couple of minutes. You will be surprised how fast these potatoes turn nice and soft and are ready to eat. Now you can absolutely leave them in the small bite-sized chunks, but if you're like me, I like mine a little on the mashed side and browned. To brown them, you just have to leave them on high heat and only flip them every so often. It's almost like you want to bring them to the point of burning, except you don't. You want to catch it just before it happens. So there they are, some delicious seasoned hash browns. So here I'm just going to build a quick side salad to go with it. And honestly guys, this meal is perfect for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Of course you can add whatever ingredients you like. For me, I'm just using some sliced radishes, some chopped peppers, cucumber, and my favorite go-to maple Dijon dressing that you guys have seen a couple of times in some of my videos. For those of you who haven't, I will post the recipe in the description box below. I topped off the potatoes with some Frank's Red Hot and some ketchup, and I had myself a delicious meal. I can't stress enough that when you have things prepped, it only takes but a couple of minutes to have yourself a healthy, filling meal. Okay, so for those of you who love shredded hash browns, I'm going to show you how to prep for those too. The first step is to thoroughly wash your potatoes, and then we are going to use a regular cheese grater to grate them. If you have never considered potatoes to be a high water content vegetable, you will change your mind once you start to grate them. Okay, so the difference with the shredded hash browns compared to the other cubed potatoes is that we are going to add an extra step. Before you blanch them, you want to put them in a bowl of ice cold water to remove some of that starch. I only left them in this water for about 2 to 3 minutes, just moving them around to try to get some of that starch off. As you can see, there is quite a bit. After you remove them from the ice bath, you want to strain them and rinse them again. And now they are ready to be blanched, just like the other ones. The only difference is you only want to leave them in the boiling water for about 2 to 3 minutes, as these soften up a lot faster than the cubed ones. After you have strained them from the boiling water, then you want to put them in a fresh bowl of ice cold water again to stop the cooking process. Again, I let them sit for about 2 to 3 minutes before straining them. And just like the other potatoes, you want to spread them out evenly onto a baking sheet. So the trick with these hash browns is that you need to absorb as much water as you possibly can in order for them to freeze nicely. You can use either a towel or paper towel to pat the hash browns dry. If you're feeling extra ambitious, you can always just pop them in the oven for a couple of minutes on a low temperature just to help absorb some of the moisture. But patting them down really good with a towel will still get the job done. Once you have them as dry as you can get them, it's time to put them in a reusable freezer bag. I personally like to use the small freezer bags as I'm able to portion it out this way, so it just helps when I'm actually ready to eat them that I don't end up wasting any. With the shredded hash browns, it's easier to use the freezer bags as opposed to the airtight containers because when we freeze them, we need to freeze them laying flat as they can be. When you are getting ready to store them, you want to make sure you have as much air out of the bag as possible. So as you can see, I'm pushing on it with the corner of the bag still open just to release as much air as I can. And that's it! Now they are ready to go into the freezer, so you just have to find a place where they can lay flat because that's exactly how we want them to freeze. Once they are frozen and you're wanting to cook them, I find with the shredded hash browns that it's easier to let them slightly defrost before cooking. You can either do this by taking them out in advance or running them under some warm water. Alright, goodbye potatoes, hello rice. As you can see, I'm using Uncle Ben's brown rice, but obviously you are free to use whatever rice you like. Start by cooking your rice, strain it, and then we are ready to go. Once your rice is cooked, you want to spread it onto a baking sheet just like the potatoes. We are going to spread it as even as we can and let the rice cool for about 20 minutes or so. Once the rice is completely cooled, then we are ready to store it in our reusable freezer bags. Just like the shredded hash browns, I find it easier to use the small storage bags just because I'm able to portion it out better. So again, we are going to be freezing these bags, laying them flat, and we want to get as much of the air out of the bags as possible. As a side note, I thought I was going to be super excited about the frozen potatoes, but seriously, I might be even more excited about the frozen rice. This has been a super game changer for me. This has been such a great hack for preparing both my dinner or my children's. So that's it. Lay them flat in your freezer for about 24 hours and you will have yourself some frozen rice. Like to crack things? Ready to have some fun? This is what the frozen rice will look like. All you want to do is break it up into chunks while it's still inside the bag. If you don't feel like doing it and you have children, I'm sure they would be happy to help mommy or daddy with this one. Okay, so after it's all cracked up, we're just going to dump it into a microwave-safe bowl. Before cooking it in the microwave, I find that by adding just a tiny splash of water, it just adds a ton of moisture to the rice. So I personally would recommend doing that, although you can try it without first and see how it goes. I cooked it in my microwave for about 2 to 3 minutes covered with a glass plate, and this is how it turned out. Delicious, fluffy, and ready to eat. Okay, so do you guys remember when I showed you how I prepped my onions and peppers in my last meal prep video? Well, alternatively, and just as easy, you can also meal prep your onions and peppers by freezing them. Okay, and so just to give credit where it's due, this is the one thing I have seen in our Canadian grocery stores that you can purchase the pre-chopped onions and peppers in the freezer section of our grocery stores. Again, such a simple thing takes a lot of work out of preparing a meal. These are great for when you want to pan fry some onions or peppers for a certain meal, or just to throw them in a soup. All you have to do is chop them however you like. As you can see here, I chop my onions into some slices. Maybe next time I would chop them into some bite-sized pieces. It's totally up to you. Throw them in a freezer bag, lay them flat, and you're good to go. The exact same method goes for the peppers. Just chop them up how you like, throw them in a freezer bag, and they are ready to go. I promise you, your future self will thank you. Easy, right? Like unbelievably easy. So there is no need to waste your money on a super small bag at the store, or for all of us Canadians who are still crossing our fingers and toes that one day we will stumble upon some oil-free frozen potatoes or frozen rice. So now we can just all easily make our own. Since I started meal prepping these along with my fresh ingredients from the other video I showed you guys, I feel like bring it on, you know, each week. It's like I feel armed for the week, if you know what I mean. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Following a high-carb, low-fat, oil-free, plant-based diet is easy enough to follow, but it does require some meal prepping and planning ahead if you really want to give yourself the best chance at being successful with it. So if you're new to meal prepping, it would make for a wonderful New Year's resolutions goal to get started with in 2021. Speaking of, my next video is going to be about some of my New Year's resolutions, some goals I'm going to be shooting for, and a little bit of my progress updates, so be sure to stay tuned for that. If you are new here, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.